Yes, sir. Okay, everybody. Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome to Movie Battleground right here. This is me, the Raptor Master self, Jonathan Peck, hosting for the very first time actually around here, though. Yeah, this is my very first hosting gig. I won't screw this up. All right. Interesting around me right here. We had two very good competitors around here. Along with me is a couple of judges going to help me out to survive this for an hour right here. On my right side of it right here, we got Mr. GT. Yeah, GT, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Uh, I'm always glad to be a part of someone's first time with hosting. That's always fun. So thank you, Jonathan, for letting me be a part of this. But no, I'm really excited. I've been a part of a lot of Nicholas's debates. I've been a part of a couple of Michael's debates, so I'm glad to see the two of them go together.
Very good indeed. And also hmm, I don't know where's my left or my right side anymore. On my other side right here, I got Mr. Kevin Paws right here, rocking the sick Mandalorian and cool pulses in the background. How you been doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you, and no, thank you for having me on. Looking forward to hearing some good debates. And speaking of first times, I think Michael might have been my first judging from this past year. So a lot of firsts going on. So yeah, good luck with your hosting, and good luck to the competitors.
Yeah, speaking of our competitors, let's introduce our competitors right here. Introducing a friendly face all around the community right here. Pretty nice guy. He got the nickname Nicholas Haig. How you doing, man?
Doing well. For those of you with questions and concerns, yes, my face is naked. It's a lot colder. It's much easier to hold my head up, I will say. But yes, the beard is gone. But as you can see, it's been about 3 days, and it'll be back soon. But I'm excited to be here today. I've judged one of Michael's fights before, and he's very good. So I'm hoping to represent and have a good time.
Okay, note to self: the red guy in the red shirt is Nick. Okay, just saying. All right, and the other competitor around here, and we got recognizing face all around the community, Mr. Michael Wood. How you doing, Mike?
Doing good. I'll just echo another sentiments. I'm very excited today. Speaking of firsts, what I love about this is I've been part of this community for ages. I'm still playing people the first time. I've never taken on Nicholas in trivia or Battleground, so always like playing someone for the first time. Think it'll be a ton of fun and very, very difficult. But looking forward to it.
I'm looking for it indeed too. All right, just want to say everybody's ready to go. Everybody's got their minds. We get your picks together. Everybody's ready. Final call.
Sure.
All right, let's start Battleground. All right, here we go. We are first question of the Battleground and the category of dramas and indies. And the question for both of you says, what is the best independent film of the 2000s? So I'm going to start with Mr. Redshirt, Nick himself. Nick, what is your selection?
Sure. So, may not seem like an independent film given the clout that this director has gained over the years, but in the 2000s, this was definitely an independent film that made waves to the point where talks of remakes are just blasphemy at this point. That's right. I'm talking about Christopher Nolan's Memento. A really unique story, a really unique way to tell a story, and a really unique thing to say about human nature and humankind. I have many things to say about my opponent's choice, but I will give him the floor, and I yield my time.
All right, Christopher Nolan's Memento. Very interesting choice. Mike, what is your selection?
Very tough question. Lots of indie films came out in 2000s. Lots I haven't seen. Lots that are they in indie, aren't they in indie? It's one of those that's a tough distinction to get at times. The film I've picked, it would be a bit remiss of me not to sort of vouch for a British talent that came through in the last decade. So I'll support the Irish writer-director Martin McDonagh, who made his breakthrough with 2008's In Bruges. Really fresh, fun comedy film. I say fun, it's a very dark comedy film, and it does have a kind of brooding undertone to it. It's a really unique film, really unique voice that came through. Another director who's gone on to quite a bit of awards clout quite recently. So yeah, a really smart, fun, fresh indie film that sort of broke through a very exciting director at the time. That's my pick, In Bruges. I don't know what time I've got left, but I'm yielding it.
All right, we got Memento versus In Bruges, and I've always forgot before we start right here. You both of you had the extension right here. If one of you were going to use it before in the match, then now please we're getting to the later rounds. You have the one extension at least. Pause. You want to set up the timer for me right here?
Yep, I got it going right here. So I'll hold up 10 seconds whenever there are 10, and then I'll count down 5. Okay.
All right, good. All right, start arguing.
All right. Michael's a great choice. Like the movie quite a bit. I think I would hope you would say the same about mine. But we're talking about the best. And you use the word fresh a lot. I don't know that's something I can agree with a lot. My big issue with In Bruges, in that it is the best, is it borrows a lot. Tarantino is all over this movie. This is a wannabe Tarantino movie. Its violence is over the top to the point where it sort of diminishes the film, and the ending really doesn't hold up to the rest of the story. And at the end of the day, they're not cops, but it's a buddy cop comedy where one's serious and laid back and the other is hot-headed. That's the movie Seven.
Okay.
A relationship I've seen before, and while like the story is different, like we've seen dark comedies before, and I think it's just a wannabe Tarantino movie. Whereas Memento is wholly original, wholly different way of telling the story, and it's an interesting story to the point where the past is the important key to what's happened. So making the past the future in the movie is mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm okay. First, I'll agree. I think we can both agree these are two good films. Memento is obviously great, and again, Nolan is a fine director. But I think we can make similar arguments about your film, sort of not being fresh. Yes, it sort of plays on an original view of time being back. So over time in films being distorted wasn't a new thing. Let's use Tarantino again. Pulp Fiction had already been a film where the time elements of the film had been jumbled up a bit. It had sort of gone for a non-linear approach. So that wasn't particularly new. And cannot apologize enough, but I am about to spoil at least 2 films here. So sorry if you haven't seen them.
Yeah, spoiler alert if you haven't seen those movies, so just for the record. Sorry. Yeah, no. Spoiler alert right here, though. All right.
Memento's ending is essentially the ending of The Usual Suspects. The guy telling the story did the crime. It is a similar plot twist. So again, that although the film does what it can to make it work. Again, if we're going for what's fresh and original, Memento has the surface of an original story, but it is stuff that we had seen before, not too many years prior to it.
Yeah, I strongly disagree. The thing about The Usual Suspects is you don't know who the person telling the story is until the end, but you know the whole time, or you know who it is, but you don't really know who they are as a person. And that's what's unique about Memento is you find out as you go along. The best thing about Memento is what it has to say about human nature and how humans have a tendency to convince themselves of their own lie. And that is played out throughout this movie beautifully by giving the person like a mental impairment to the point where they can actually convince themselves of their own lie because there's no way they would know. And you say non-linear storytelling, this story is completely linear. It's backwards. So Tarantino's Pulp Fiction is all over the place, and it's done that on purpose. But the point of Memento is to find out what happened at the beginning by starting at the end. I really don't know. I'm sure that's not a wholly original concept, but the idea that what's kicked off the story is like the big climax. I think that's the first time we've seen it. And just because it's the first time we've seen something doesn't make it the best, but we've seen it for the first time and it being amazing and having that effect and having that making you look at yourself and sort of be like, oh my gosh, like humans really do, like humans get lost in their own lives. And that's what the movie, like my problem with In Bruges, it doesn't have anything to say like that. Like, yes, it's a dark comedy. It has some funny jokes here and there, but the ending falls flat. And I don't know if you want to talk about the ending. I know you said you were going to spoil both, but the ending falls flat for me for what the story leads up to.
Just a couple things very quickly. Right, I was going to spoil 2 films. I meant Memento and The Usual Suspects. I'm happy to spoil and everything for everyone. Why not? I will defend the non-linear thing because it isn't exactly linear. It kind of starts at the end and then goes back to being, and it ends in the middle as Memento. So I will defend the non-linear point, but that's a fairly not too big a point. I actually think In Bruges does have a bit to say. It has a bit to say about human propensity for self-destruction and corruption, and how these can sort of lead to how self-destruction can affect people. And Colin Farrell starts the film in a bad place. He gets into a better place as the film goes on. He meets Clemens Posey's character, but because of his propensity for self-destruction, he ends up back where he starts at the beginning, not because he isn't a developed character, but just because that's what the film is trying to say. I would also argue one point in favour in Bruges, and this is not necessarily criticism of Memento. It is a criticism of Memento, but films with a big twist ending, that's kind of their big thing. I wonder if you have these two films together, which has the better rewatchability, and I would perhaps argue in Bruges. I think a film like that, it's fairly short, snappy, does have stuff to say, but is wholly entertaining. Memento gives away its key element in its first viewing, and I guess maybe a second viewing to watch it unfold knowingly. But beyond that, I don't know how rewatchable it is compared to In Bruges. That's all I'm saying there.
Cool. I don't think I can get the retort out to that in 2 seconds, so I'll see you in the final round.
All right. Before we go on right here, we just want to take you two final thoughts around here before I make a decision. Starting with Nick.
Okay. Just real quick, isn't it whoever starts?
Yeah, no, we're gonna start with Michael. If you start the debate, you end the debate.
Oh,
so Michael's gonna start with his closing, and then Nick's close.
All right, Michael. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, a little fluff on my bad.
Yep, no problem. Yep. So just in closing, as said in the opening, In Bruges, very fresh film, very snappy film, brought up a very exciting new talent in Martin McDonagh. As I've said during the arguments, I believe it does have some thematic depth to it about human propensity for self-destruction. I think it's a very watchable film. I think it's a very entertaining film. And I do think in terms of freshness, there is a good comparability between this and Memento. I think this is quite a fresh film, a quite unique film. And yeah, you're my time. I think I've said all I can really say here.
Okay, Nick.
Okay, so you say the thing about films with twist endings is that's all they have. That's not true. There are twists. Look at all M. Night Shyamalan's films. Every one that has a twist ending that is bad doesn't work and people don't remember it. The film has to be good. And the great thing about Memento is it does that twist ending like 4 or 5 times, to the point where like his relationship with Carrie Ann Moss, like you think it's something, then it's something else. There's so many twists and turns that it's very interesting to follow. I get the idea of like teaching about humans' nature to self-destruct, but that is not a new concept seen in film. Like that was done so many times before that. But the idea that humans can get lost in their own lies and tangled, and to tell it in this way where this person actually does that intentionally, but to the point where like his newer self, because he loses his memory, like doesn't know that he did that, it makes me terrified to like be inside my own head. And I think that's something a really good film can do. The black and white nature of it, it's very artistic. It's really got all the elements to the point like no one's talking about In Bruges anymore. People are talking about Memento and remaking it, and everyone's like, no, don't do that. It's perfect the way it is. So to me, like these are 2 very good indie films of the 2000s, but Memento is by far the best. You can look at the talent of the director, I think is better in the 2 films, and it's original, it's unique, and it's still original and unique. Like nonlinear storytelling isn't original, but the way it's used here, the way it's used where like there are points that the person remembers and doesn't, and people change based on how Guy Pearce's character remembers it. Sorry, I got lost in my own words, but it's a really great film, really unique message, really interesting, original concept, different way to tell a story. And In Bruges just kind of falls flat at the end and is over violent.
Time. Okay, wow. 2 very good arguments from here. This might be a very interesting one to argue. two very good arguments to two very good movies. I'm gonna get my thoughts to Kevin real quick. What do you think you have a better argument, and your thoughts on the argument?
Um, just to be quick, I think I'm going to give my point here to Nick. He was able to counter everything that Michael brought up. Michael, you made some good points about the distortion of time, how that was Pulp Fiction had already done that. The rewatchability of In Bruges, I would do agree with you there about how they're both unique. But like I said, Nick, you countered it. The Usual Suspects, you don't know who the who the bad guy is. In Memento, it's the main guy. The human nature thing that you convince yourself of your own lie. It is linear. It's just backwards. The points you made were just too good to not give you this point, so I got to give it to Nick.
All right, now Nick. I'm gonna go with my thoughts real quick. Thing won me over is I'm going to go with Kevin to give the point to Nick, just because Mike is right about one thing though, the rewatchability though, but at the same time, not sure part of the question right here. And Nick's rebuttals right here are the counterpoints of the films with a twist, like Usual Suspects, and pretty much all the films right here. And you're sort of like, if you're watching the film right here, it's a twist all over the place around here, and also the mystery around here, and the more capacity of the film is. So I didn't get my points to Nick with that. Round one belongs to Nick right here. Sure, one no. DT, you were muted for a second, and the paper is going to Nick. So, what were your point you go to? Where you could have?
No, I was leaning with y'all too. I was leaning towards Nick. This was very back and forth the entire time. Nick really won it in the closing for me with his comments of, with the twist end. Michael said with the twist ending, it kind of ruins the movie. Nick rebutted it with, if it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, yes, but if it's an actually good movie, it doesn't. And that was really something he said that won me over to him. So I was going to go with Nick as well.
Very good. We got the first point. Round one is 1-0 Nick. Very good job, Nick. We're going to round two. Round two, and the counter of the question is animated. So pretty much we know. We all love Pixar, right? Like, we watch Pixar movies, all that stuff. We all have timeless characters. And we have an interesting question for both of you of this. Who is the most iconic Pixar character out there? So, the most iconic is much not only a beloved character and a more recognizable face of sorts. So, I'm going to head out to Mike of your selection.
Okay, I'm going with Woody from the Toy Story films. That's where it all sort of really began for Pixar. Toy Story is where it started. Toy Story is where they've most recently left off. It's what they keep going back to. Woody is very much the face of Toy Story. All the Toy Story films are at their heart about Woody. He's an instantly recognizable character, instantly recognizable face. Instantly recognizable design and costume even is clearly a Woody costume. Instantly recognizable quotes, there's a snake in my boots and all that. Everything about him is just, it's there, it's known, it's what they keep going back to. He's their main character, he's their main man. He's a huge part of why the company is where it is today and where it still continues to be today. I mean, I'm pretty sure Toy Story 4 has plus of 1 billion worldwide. Please fact check me on that. I'm pretty confident on that.
It crossed 1 billion, though, so you're right on that one.
What was that, sorry?
You're correct, though. You're correct. It did pass 1 billion.
So yeah, Woody, he's their main man. He's their most iconic character. I will wait to hear what Nick says.
Okay. Nick, what is your selection?
Yeah, quick fact check. Pixar did not start with Toy Story. Pixar started with a 1987 short called Luxo Jr. Everyone may not know his name, but the fact is he is the face of Pixar. Woody doesn't tell you that Finding Nemo is a Pixar movie. Woody doesn't tell you that Brave is a Pixar movie. Luxo Jr. tells you that those are Pixar movies. He comes out before, and I know this might seem like a joke answer. I promise it's not. The whole idea behind Pixar is we give adult emotions to things. We give them to toys, we give them to cars, we give them to fish, we give them to emotions, for crying out loud, and Inside Out. The first thing they did that with was this lamp that was so endearing that it launched a company to be able to make all these movies. And it made such an impact that they kept him around in all of the movies. Now, everyone might not know his name. The fact is the Kool-Aid guy got the name the Kool-Aid guy because everyone goes, I don't know what his name is. That's the Kool-Aid guy who yells, oh, yeah. The iconicism of Luxo Jr. is known because if someone sees that little lamp bouncing on a ball before a Pixar movie, that's how they know it's a Pixar movie. I yield my time.
Very interesting and surprising choice by Nick. So we got this round 2. We got a lamp versus Tom Hanks. This should be interesting. So, all right, begin.
Agree. It is an interesting choice, and I think you also kind of undermined yourself because you even admit it there. Not everyone might know his name. Yeah, people may say that they recognise the Pixar lamp, but if we're talking about iconic, we're talking about icons here, wherever the word is, and I think at what point can you become an icon? I think you have to be someone that everyone knows who you are, and if people don't know who Luxo Jr. is, if they only think of it as the lamp, as the Pixar lamp, then yeah, that's not really very strong iconism. That's just being a image that people kind of get, as opposed to Woody. If you show people a picture of Woody, then people go, "That's Woody." You might get, the odd idiot that goes, "Oh, that's that thing from the toy film," but people would generally be able to pick out Woody and say, "That is Woody. This is what he's from. This is how I associate him in those films. This is what I've seen him do in those films." What's Luxo done? He jumps on the eye a bit. I don't think many people have seen a short film.
So important, and I understand your concerns with my choice. You said Woody's the most iconic character in those films. You're right. He's the most iconic Toy Story character. I'm not going to debate that. He's not the most iconic Pixar character. You even just called Luxo Jr. the Pixar lamp. Like, people do not need to know his name. And that short film it's like, first of all, it kicked off Pixar shorts. Like, all people love Pixar shorts. Jack Attack, For the Birds. I love Knick Knack personally. But just because something's shorter or they have like less of a thing to do doesn't make it any less iconic. And I think that's even more impressive that he's been able to stick around in every single Pixar movie. He kicks it off. That's what iconicism is. He's the brand. Now again, like, not every name recognition does not equal iconicism. And you say, like, people recognize Woody's style of dress. Are you sure they're not thinking of like any Clint Eastwood movie or Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future 3? Like, Woody being a cowboy does not, like, if you say the word cowboy, people don't go, oh, Woody. Like, there are other things associated with that. And you're right, he's very iconic. That's why I didn't pick Buzz. That's why I didn't pick Bo Peep. That's why I didn't pick Rex, which, by the way, in this movie, even though he's the most iconic character from this movie, those movies don't work if it's not an ensemble cast. And honestly, I think a lot of people saw that with Toy Story 4, which dipped a lot. Like, it made a lot of money, but it dipped in quality a lot because they focused way too much on Woody as opposed to the ensemble cast. Woody's great. I love Woody. But the fact is, we're talking about iconicism, and Luxo Jr. is the only consistent through line through all Pixar movies. Even though he just started off with a short little minute and a half thing that made everyone go, oh, look at that lamp. It's so cute. And thus Pixar was born.
The thing that I think what helps Luxo become recognized as part of Pixar, and why I think Luxo is cheating a bit here, Luxo is quite literally in Pixar. Luxo appears in the word Pixar. So you can't really get away from it there. Yeah, I that might back to a point, but this is what I'm saying. Every brand has a logo, and that logo is just a sort of marketing tool that they use. The Kool-Aid guy is just a marketing tool. No, Luxo is associated with Pixar because he is in Pixar. But you know, is that it? You know, people are personality outside of jumping on the letter I in Pixar.
Sure.
You know, and you say that, you know, as soon as Luxo shows up, that people know it's a Pixar film. They also know it's a Pixar film because the word Pixar is in very big letters, plus a lamp shoved in the middle.
It helps. People recognize the Wendy's girl, even though she's under Wendy's. Like, oh crap! I was just gonna say something. Crap. Okay. Anyway, Luxo Jr. He's more than just a symbol in the word Pixar. And yes, being in the word Pixar actually makes him more iconic to the Pixar brand. Woody does nothing for Finding Nemo. Woody does nothing for The Incredibles. Woody does nothing for Brave, for Inside Out, for Ratatouille, for WALL-E. Luxo Jr. is the through line, and he has emotions. He kicked off the idea that inanimate objects.
Time. Okay. Okay. Michael, we'll start with you with final thoughts. Then we go to Nick for his final thoughts. Ooh, sorry, my mouth's a little off.
Let's start with Nick.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Or Nick. Sorry.
I remember what I was saying. Kim Kardashian hasn't done anything. Everyone knows who she is. You don't have to do something to become iconic. Luxo Jr. is that, because if you take away the Wendy's logo, you still recognize Wendy. If you take away the Pixar logo, you still recognize it as Luxo Jr. or the Pixar lamp. Now, that is what we're talking about with iconicism. Woody's iconic for Toy Story, but so is Buzz, but so is Rex, but so is Mr. Potato Head. I almost might argue Mr. Potato Head might be more in terms of toy sales and stuff, but regardless, Luxo Jr. has the through line through Pixar, not through Toy Story, through all of their things. And they're the heart and soul of what they are, the idea of giving emotions to things. Woody would be nothing without Luxo Jr. because Luxo Jr. was the first inanimate object to get emotions. And that's how they came up with Toy Story. They were like, how do we give inanimate objects more emotions? So for me, the idea of Pixar, that's the important distinction for me. Woody is the most iconic Toy Story character. Luxo Jr. is the most iconic Pixar character based on recognition, and based on history, and based on the fact that you're right, he's in the Pixar name. You can call it cheating, but the fact is that creates a link. Like, marketers know what they're doing. I used to study a little marketing. It's a little like underhanded. It's a little cheap, as you said, but the fact is it's still there. So there you go.
All right. Mike?
Kim Kardashian hasn't done nothing. She let an asshole fuck her and then she became famous. That's how fame works. Number two, I'm English. I have no idea who the fuck the Wendy's girl is, so that's a really pointless argument as well. Number three, Luxo. Firstly, I don't think Luxo is, I mean, yeah, the lamp is kind of recognizable, but people won't know that it's Luxo Jr. They won't know the backstory. And they only really know it because it's in the word Pixar, which appears in a huge screen before a bunch of the most popular films ever made. 4 of those films being Toy Story films, of which Woody has been the central character, the central through line. All the films revolve around him. So yes, there is a great ensemble cast of characters behind it. So many characters I could pick from that film, but they are essentially about Woody, and the films do not work if Woody himself cannot be liked, recognized, adored, and continue to sell a film, 24, 25 years after the original one came out, it's still making $1 billion. That is how iconism works, not a sort of gimmicky marketing tool that has been kind of stuck about for tradition, but isn't really known by name, by history. It's just sort of a thing that people recognize once every 2 years when a new film comes out, or I guess twice in a year, this year, for example. But Woody is known by everyone. Everyone knows who Woody is, what his part of Pixar is. And that's why I think he's just so much more iconic.
All right. Very good. Very interesting choices on the both ends right here. So I'm gonna start with me for saying this. Nick, at first I was a little bit confused or a little questioned if it made the sort of interesting choice around here. As far as you go on the argument, though, the I think that's actually a very good choice right here. He is a very recognizable brand. It's kind of amazingly with business in general, you recognize it right here, though. But I felt like it wasn't enough for you to get a little bit more than why he's a little bit more recognizable. How do I say this? A little bit more, not only recognizable, but a little bit more heart to it around here, though. So I think Mike put up a better case than Woody is not only the most recognizable character of Pixar's history, but there's the reasons why we recognize that we love them in the first place. So I'm gonna give my point to Mike. So, Mr. West, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you get the point to?
Yeah, I will agree. This is another very interesting argument. Nick, I'm not gonna lie. When you said Luxo Jr., I was like, who? Is that the bear in Toy Story 3? Oh, I know that's Lotso. Thank you for explaining it a lot more, though. But here's my biggest issue with your argument, Nick. If the question was who is the most important Pixar character, it would easily be you. A lot of the stuff you are referring to, with Woody isn't iconic to Finding Nemo. Woody isn't iconic to The Incredibles. You start naming off those Pixar movies, and it's like Woody's not in them. The question is who is the most iconic Pixar character. And so if you think of Pixar, what characters are you thinking of? Not really how it's a Pixar movie. So you're leaning really heavily on that, and I think it's kind of null and void to the argument. Again, valiant choice. I always love when people bring up a random answer that some people do have to Google and then do a fantastic job of arguing, which you did. I don't think it was enough to turn me towards you. I'm also gonna have to go with Michael on this one for Woody.
Sorry, guess which one of us got to pick first?
All right, with that, we'll get the point for round two to Michael right here. Congratulations right here. Kevin, what was your point we're going to?
I agree with both of you guys. Nick, props on even picking Luxo Jr. Going back to 1986. I mean, it's ballsy to even go there. But I mean, you started off your argument with the adult emotions and inanimate objects thing, but then, like Jacob said, I mean, it's just too much to say that Pixar really wouldn't be anything without Luxo, because I think Michael put it best in his closing that he's more of a tradition than a character. Woody really is the iconicity of Woody is just there. He sells films, and that's what he does. So I would have given the point to Michael.
We're getting Michael anyway. So I'd 1-1. This should be very interesting. And also, I forgot to mention it before we went out round. Thank you for putting out the Kim Kardashian argument to your point, Nick, which is a very weird tactic. But I admire you if you're trying to do it. So could also at least make an attempt. So let's go to round 3 for a second and go into round 3.
And language, Michael. Yeah. Language.
Sorry.
Easy. All right. We're going to round 3 and the questions of classics. Question of classics. It's another interesting question. What film between 1969 to 1989 would consider a timeless classic? Another wording for that is stand the test of time. So I'm going with Nick on this selection. What did you pick?
Cool. Big Star Wars fan. Star Wars is around. You're wearing a Star Wars shirt, Kevin. I went with the best Star Wars film in that time period that you mentioned, and that is The Empire Strikes Back. Now, this is a space opera. We've never lived in space. The way they do in this movie is totally fantasy. yet it deals with human emotions that existed hundreds of years ago and still will exist in hundreds of years from now. That is why The Empire Strikes Back is a timeless classic, and it's very entertaining. It's got science fiction, it's got fantasy, it's got romance, it's got friendship, it's got literally everything you need. That all of those things are timeless. So my answer is The Empire Strikes Back, and I yield my time.
All right, The Empire Strikes Back. Mike, what is your selection?
Well, there's, and I'm not even sure I'm king here. There's probably at least 50 answers to this question. You picked a 20-year category, which includes the 70s and most of the 80s. It's difficult to pinpoint one film. Empire Strikes Back is pretty good, but it is a second film, and it's sort of part of a wider franchise. I wanted to pick a film which stood on its own, and a film that people would, if they said, "Oh, we're going to redo this film," everyone go gasp because the classic is so beloved. So I opted for Back to the Future, which I think is a film which has, there are a couple of sequels. They're also pretty good, but this film is, this hasn't been touched since. This is a film which is still one of the most popular films of all time, even though they haven't gone back to it for 20 plus years. It's got two of the most iconic characters. We just talked about iconic characters. We've got Martin McFly and Doc Brown, two completely original characters. This is a film that was completely new, exhilarating at the time. It's held up brilliantly. It's even, if anything, it's become even more interesting now that we've gone past that period and we can see it as a reflection of how the future is viewed back then. This is probably main argument stuff, so I'll shut up and we can main argue it.
All right, we got The Empire Strikes Back, Back to the Future. And before people are asking, I'm holding a Doc Brown Funko. There's no bias thing right here. I just want to point out how cool it is. So, all right. All right, Back to the Future versus The Empire Strikes Back. Let's argue.
Okay, I'm just going to go straight in because it's the main thing I'm going to say. Star Wars: A New Hope came first. That's pretty straightforward. Yes, Empire is a great film. Yes, it will, people obviously continue to love it, but it is piggybacking off the success of a greater classic. Many will argue that A New Hope is the better film, and regardless of that, it is, at the end of the day, it's the film that came first. It's the one that introduces all the characters that we love in The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back utilizes them well, but I just feel like your argument should really be for A New Hope rather than The Empire Strikes Back.
Sure. I'd be happy to have the argument that, that's loud. I'd be happy to have the argument that both A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back are more timeless than Back to the Future. But I picked The Empire, just because there's another movie like that can also be a timeless classic. And I think in many years from now, people will stay that Empire is still the best. I don't have to get rid of the other movies to say that this movie will also be timeless along with them. I think it will be the most timeless because it will be the best. And the fact is, they continue. Like you said, they don't want to touch Back to the Future, remaking it. They're not doing that with Star Wars either. There'd be an uprising. They're okay, continuing and expanding the universe because that movie really did that was the first time it created such a universe that could be expanded like that. So that in itself is timeless. My issue with Back to the Future, it's literally dated. It's got dates on it. 1985, 1955. Those are still right now because there's still people are alive that's nostalgic for. It's a good movie. I like it very much, but we don't really need to get into the technical things because they both will look dated eventually in terms of effects and sound and all that kind of thing. But I think with Back to the Future, it's also part of a franchise. So that can be a knock against Star Wars, but I'm arguing for Empire Strikes Back, not as a sole movie that will stand the test of time, but I was asked to pick one movie. Just because it's in a series does not mean it will also stand the test of time along with A New Hope.
Yeah, I get that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it was given so much more of a helping hand towards becoming a classic. And what I think is so great about Back to the Future is it is completely its own thing. Obviously, like you said, it's part of a franchise, but it is the starting point. It is where this all began. It's where Marty started. It's where Doc started. It's where the DeLorean started. All these iconic things. That's what I'm trying to say. That's more of an impressive achievement. And you talk about the backdating. I sort of alluded to it. I think that will actually help the film having those dates in it. It will help it become such a fascinating and unique piece of pop culture. Is that, as well as being this obviously hugely entertaining sort of 80s popcorn flick, it does now actually serve as a really interesting time capsule. You know, this is how our time was viewed in the 80s. I think people keep going back to that as saying, you know, people can watch it, A, because it's great and it's super entertaining, and B, because it's a really interesting look at how we've developed over time and how we thought we would develop, how we ended up developing. I really do think that will only serve to help it going forward. I think that will help it to keep being revisited, keep being discovered, keep being loved by audiences throughout. You know, and yeah, sure, Star Wars will sort of continue rumbling on. How successful it'll be, we don't know. It's kind of diminishing a bit if you look at the box office returns, you could argue, and also the fact that people don't really universally love the new films. That's not knocking Empire specifically, but you do wonder if that will hurt its legacy being part of a franchise which is kind of, yeah, it's still popular, but it is kind of all over the place at times.
Sure. I hate Back to the Future too. I really don't like Back to the Future too. I think its depiction of the future in both timelines are really bad. So just because the later films might not hold weight to the originals does not make them any less timeless. Now, you say iconicism only came from A New Hope. The Imperial March came from Empire. You can start that movie. That movie totally stands on its own. Like, you get to know who those characters are if you haven't met them before. And it does. It stands on its own, but it doesn't need to. Like, it can be timeless along with the film that came before it. It's just an improvement on the film. And while people might not like the new trilogy, it still drives them back to the old one. It drives younger people back to it, because the important thing is the themes it explores are timeless. Now, Back to the Future, it's nostalgia. That's all it is. The reason it's still popular is because there are still people that are like, I was alive in the 50s. It's not going to be like a look at pop culture, because it's not really, like, I know people say this, but it's not really relevant of those times. Like, there's not too many things you can pick out that go, oh, that's the 50s, that's the 80s, other than like, we have a television set. There's going to be kids 100 years from now that are like, we have 20 television sets. Like, who cares? I don't want to watch this. Let's watch a space opera with laser swords where there's romance and there's friendship, and I can actually learn something. And the visuals are still cool, even though they probably won't hold up because there'll be better visuals, but the same's for Back to the Future. But the visuals in Empire are definitely better than Back to the Future. And like iconicism, again, this talk about iconicism, like, it has built this brand to people who know Star Wars. You can say The Empire Strikes Back, and just about every single person will know you're talking about Star Wars. My thing with Back to the Future is it's dated. We're saying right now it's a timeless classic, but it's because there's still people who are alive in the 80s who saw it when it came out. But that's not like the fact that it stopped, I think, is a real testament to the fact that people maybe didn't want it anymore. Like, the second one didn't do great, the third one didn't do great, and the first movie wasn't enough to make people say, like, no, we'll forgive the mistakes, like we've done with Star Wars, to keep this franchise going. And how much can you really expand in Back to the Future? Not a whole lot.
Time. Okay. All right. Final thoughts for both of you, starting with, I hope I get this correct this time, Mike. All right, Mike, final thoughts.
So, I was born in 1995, as were a lot of my friends. Some of my friends were born in 1996, and we all love Back to the Future. We have no memory of the 80s. We have no connotations to it. We love the film. You know, it's still shown in schools at the moment. You know, kids haven't been born in the 80s for years, and they're still loving Back to the Future. I don't think it really matters that if you're from the 80s or not. I think people are going to continue to love the film because it is a really entertaining popcorn flick. It stands on its own. It has a lot of cool things in it still, even though they haven't come to fruition. They're still really interesting concepts. And yeah, even basic things like time travel. It's a fun thing to throw into a film. I don't think it matters if you're born in the 80s or not to love the film. It's a very easy, accessible tale. It stands on its own. It's still super entertaining. Star Wars. I just think Empire has kind of cheated its way to that classic status because it is piggybacking off of A New Hope. Yeah, it still utilizes certain things very well, but its classic status is obtained through another means. It has such a huge helping hand there, whereas Back to the Future came in straight off the bat, still known today, without any helping hand. It's just the mad original vision of Robert Zemeckis and whatever Spielberg threw into it. I just think that is a far more impressive achievement than Empire.
All right. Nick.
Would we consider The Godfather Part 2 not a classic because there was a movie that came before it? I don't think so. So I really don't think that Empire cheated. I think it built on a film that came before it and became a better film and a more remembered film, and it's most people's favorite film. Now, just because the fact that it is still living on, it has created this large universe. There's an entire section of Disney Plus that has this based on the original trilogy, the best of which is Empire Strikes Back. Original things came out of it. The lightsaber duel between Darth Vader and Luke is iconic. Han Solo and Carbonite, I love you, I know. There are classic things in both of these films, but my issue with Back to the Future is we don't know. Like at the very most, we don't know if it will be timeless because there are still people alive. I also was born in 1995, so that's interesting. And I like the film a lot, but I have a feeling, Michael, that you and your friends might be people who like movies and film history and things like that. In order to appeal to the general public the way Star Wars has, you need a great movie and a timeless classic like Empire Strikes Back, which has brought a lot of original things. And no one's gonna know. Like you say that it's a time capsule, but Empire's a time capsule. Like we are exploring themes. We are exploring things that are universal, regardless of what time you were born in, regardless of anything like that. Back to the Future is nostalgia, and eventually one day, like 100 years from now, kids are going to see past it and they're going to say, no, I want Star Wars because I don't know. That's an escape from my world. It's not a visit to the past. It's an escape where I don't know what it could be, and it could be anything, and my imagination can run wild while Back to the Future is
Time. Ooh. Wow. Man. I'm a little stuck in a corner around here with these picks and these arguments. Okay, gonna come to GT with his thoughts and who the points you give it to. So,
all right, so going with me first. I love both these movies. I'm a nerd, so I love anything and everything Star Wars. I love the entire Back to the Future franchise. So Nick, I am a little upset with you for saying that you do not like Back to the Future 2 and 3.
If Hotel is weird.
But whatever. I'm not bringing that in. Both of y'all defended your movies fantastically. My biggest issue is that y'all both were attacking on one front. Nick, you were attacking that Back to the Future is dated because it's about 1985 and then 1955. It's literally dated. You can look back at that as a time capsule, but that's about it. Michael, you were hitting him on Star Wars Empire Strikes Back is great because Episode 4 is great, and just that whole franchise is what's able to beat that. And y'all both were able to take a rebuttal on that one argument that each of you brought in. So I was really hoping that y'all would attack the other person's movie a lot more to let me have a good decision on who to go with. So what I'm going to base it off of is what does your movie bring to the present day. Michael, you made the comment Back to the Future as a time capsule. You can see what 1985 was like. But Nick, you said, the Imperial March that came from Empire Strikes Back. You have all those themes. The movie's quotable, just all this stuff, the lightsaber duels, all these things bringing in to us in Disney Plus, just what it's built off of. And mainly because of that, I'm going to have to go with Nick for my point.
All right, we're playing to Nick. Kevin, who are you gonna give it to?
This was a tough one. I agree with Jacob that I kind of wish I would have expanded your arguments outside the dated versus the sequel argument. I do love Star Wars, but I also love Back to the Future. Nick brought up that the new trilogies, or the new trilogy, and even the prequels, they drive people back to the original trilogy. That kind of rang, really, it just rang true to me. And the fact that it deals with the human emotions of romance and friendship, and those are indeed timeless. This is really tight, guys. But I got to give my point to Nick, just based on those two tiny points alone.
Okay. Thank God you didn't have to pick this one. This round belongs to Nick. We're now 2-1 Nick. For me, same thing. I love both of these movies, so it was just kind of like put a gun in my head, like which one should I pick? Even though Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies of all time, and also a movie that got me influenced to do film, but I think Nick had probably a better argument right here, though, the points that he said. I kind of wish Mike could have pointed up. Mainly it's the characters, the relationships that between the characters have right here. I kind of wish Adam Mike could have put that out there, and Nick did put it instead. So I had to kind of same thing, even though it was a tough one for me personally, but I had to go with Nick on the Empire Strikes Back. So right now, we got 2-1 Nick. Mike, you need this next point to stay alive. If not, Nick will win the game with this next point. And we're going for round 4 and comic book movies. So we love villains, mainly comic book villains. But let's be honest, with some sessions, some of the MCU's villains are sort of not that great or didn't get any potential. So this question might be an interesting one. It says, what is the most wasted MCU villain? What I mean by that is didn't live up to the villains based around it didn't live up to, or maybe just kill off right away. So with this, I'm gonna go with Mike on this one. So Mike, what did you pick?
So I too have picked a slightly risky answer to go for today, and being 2-1 down, this is perhaps not the time to be utilising it, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. I am unironically saying Loki. Now, you've said it, Mr. Master, already, that MCU kind of have a theme. They play a bit safe. They kind of have very chalkboard villains that all kind of do the same thing. A lot of them are a bit naff. Yeah, we're recording this on the day that they've parted ways with Scott Derrickson because of creative differences. That being, Scott Derrickson wanted to be creative, and Marvel did not. I presume that seems to be how it works. It's something else entirely to have a villain that is quite good, build them over a couple of films, and then go through a process of slowly dismantling that and making the character a complete, basically a self-parody. In Thor Ragnarok, by the time we've had the whole Loki arc, there is a scene, quite literally, where two people say to Loki, "My, you've become so predictable." We know Marvel are rubbish with villains. We know they're going to do a few naff ones from time to time. But I think to have a villain that A, has potential, B, shows the potential, and then C has that potential ripped from underneath him as a whole other thing entirely. And that's why I think Loki is the character they have most let down the potential of.
Oh, Loki. Interesting call. Just say that. Nick, what'd you pick?
I picked Luxo Judy. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Mr. Scorsese, you can be quiet over there for a minute. The villain I picked was truly a wasted villain in my eyes. My favorite comic book storyline of all time is Civil War. And I thought Captain America Civil War did it beautifully, adapted it as best as they could, did great. The person who kills Captain America at the end of Civil War, the comic run, his name is Crossbones. All we got out of Crossbones in the MCU was a fist fight with Falcon that he then gets crushed by a building. And then he blew some people up at the beginning, not even on purpose, like Scarlet Witch did, but like he blew himself up at the beginning of Civil War. This is the definition of a wasted villain. My thing with Civil War, which I love, the villain's kind of weak in that. Baron Zemo, kind of weak in that. So that was almost my answer for the most wasted villain with the most potential. But the fact is, there was another villain in there that had even more potential that was usurped by this villain that potential was wasted. So that to me is the most wasted potential. Sorry, I'm repeating a lot of words. That was the most wasted potential in a villain in the MCU by far. This is a person with the capability of killing Captain America, and they made him a one-off S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who dies in the first 10 minutes of the movie. That's not the clout that Crossbones has. So to me, that's the most wasted. I can talk a lot about Loki in the next 5 minutes, but I will punch in some Crossbones comments here and there.
All right, Loki versus Crossbones. All right, that might be fun. Battle that.
Sure.
Yeah. So key thing to remember here is that we're talking about the Marvel movies and not the Marvel comic books. I don't read comic books, and I think a lot of the people that watch the MCU probably, I know a lot of them do, but I think you'd be surprised to go and watch the movies without knowing about the comic books. They go because it's a good sort of family franchise. So, what Crossbones does in the comic books, I don't think really matters. It's about how the movies utilize them. I know that people are going to now say that Loki is excellent. I'm very prepared for this, and I get it. He has an interesting arc that builds through Thor and culminates in the Avengers, and it makes him a very interesting character. But then we have to go through Thor: The Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok, and we have to watch them take something which not only has potential, but actually has shown the potential on the screen, and they just dismantle it because Marvel are such idiots when they make films, and they just take. Literally 2 people in Thor: Ragnarok tell Loki that he has become predictable because he's become this predictable. He does the same thing every film. He's become a parody of himself. He's gone from this sort of menacing character to this sort of pathetic, fancy dancy, only there because Tom Hiddleston can sell films character. There's no threat or menace to him anymore. So now when you watch the Avengers, you're thinking, yeah, this was menacing at the time, but now he's just a rubbishy, fluffy, throwaway character that they use for some random comic effects from time to time. That's what I think is wasted potential, to have something with a legacy and wipe that legacy out.
Well, I don't think the legacy is wiped out. He reached his potential. He was a menacing villain. He made Avengers what it was. And then he played a key role in telling us who Thanos is. Thanos, who was set up from the beginning to be the big bad, saying, look at your scary, menacing villain from the first Avengers. This is me choking him out. Loki serves a purpose. Everything Loki does, even in his comedic effect, he's still that's the thing. He's the god of mischief. He is a character. His mischief can get to the point of Avengers destroying a city, and it can get to the point of Thor Ragnarok and being on the right hand of the Grandmaster. This is the opposite of wasted potential. They have made such an interesting arc for this character, because if you just make a villain, and then in the next movie he's a villain again, and then in the next movie he's a villain again, that's boring. That's a waste of potential, and that gets old. What they did with Loki was they kept it fresh. You might not have liked it, but like I liked it a lot. I liked where they went with Loki, and I thought when he died, spoiler alert, I thought when he died, that was the right time to kill him off. I thought his arc was completed, and I thought his potential was fulfilled. Crossbones gets none of that. He's an agent in Winter Soldier, and then he dies immediately. Like, oh my God, when I saw the building collapse and then he was still alive at the end, I was like, oh my God, they're going to do it. Like they just made him an agent, but now he's going to be Crossbones, and he's going to be the threat of Captain America Civil War. I remember going to that movie thinking, oh my God, Brock Rumlow is going to kill him at the end, or he's going to kill Bucky or something. They're going to twist something like that. My thing is, you say, I get it. Most people don't read the comics. But that's the definition of potential, is what is their prior history. You might not know it, but the potential is still there. Just because you didn't read it, or most of the audience didn't read it, does not mean there's not wasted potential there. His backstory is crazy good, and they just ignore all of that. And I get it. There's not a whole lot of room in the movies, but the fact is they forewent him for a worse villain in Baron Zemo. Right? At least a worse villain portrayed on screen. That's where the potential is gone, and that's what's so frustrating, makes you rip your hair out, is go, why didn't you just make Crossbones the villain? You set him up great, you gave him the suit so that he could go toe-to-toe with Cap, and then he blows up. That's a waste.
So, yeah, like I said, they did Loki's arc. Loki's arc is Thor and the Avengers, and there's no point. They don't need to bring him back to be a villain again. What they need to do is find a new villain to have a same legacy as Loki, not say, oh, Loki's been good, but we can't think of new ideas because we're not a very creative studio, so we're just going to bring him back. I know I'm slagging Marvel off a lot. I know everyone loves them.
It's okay.
Just bring him back and saying, well, he worked before, so let's try and sort of wring him to death, and we may have done well with him past. Let's now just use him to death and drag him to the brink. I'm running out of time, but I just want to say I actually think Baron Zemo is better than Crossbones. I think Baron Zemo is a really interesting villain, the way he sort of operates from the background. And that's why I don't really think Crossbones has very potential, because time's up, so that's why I stopped talking. Okay. In my clothes.
All right.
You did a lot of talking.
The suspense is killing me.
All right.
I need to know why.
Okay, thank you. All right, final thoughts from each of you when you start talking. Go.
Wait, who goes?
Sorry, Nick. I'm getting used to it.
You're good, buddy. You say Loki was wasted after the Avengers. He wasn't. He went places. He became a character. In Thor: The Dark World, you learn he loves his mom. In Thor: Ragnarok, you learn he loves his brother. And finally, right before he's about to go out, he says, I'm Loki, Odin's son. That's the definition of completing an arc, not doing something till it's dead. And literally, he died. But he was a great villain. And then he became a great anti-hero. It's progression. His status as a villain met its potential. If anything, it exceeded its potential, because The Avengers is a great movie and is still thought of today, and he's still considered one of the best villains. Crossbones is this character with an amazing backstory who did amazing things in the comics, which not a lot of people read, but the fact is they still happen. He's based on a pre-existing character with pre-existing history, and he did amazing things, and the fact is they just cut him off right at the beginning of the movie. Baron Zemo in the comics is a great villain too, but in Captain America: Civil War, what he's doing just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The moves he makes, they wouldn't add up to the way they do in the movie. And I love the movie, but he's a wasted villain because they give the spotlight to a different villain who does not do anything with that spotlight. Imagine if you had a superstar quarterback. I don't love football, but I guess this is a good analogy. If you had a superstar quarterback, but you put in some other guy who also had potential, but that person didn't do it, you would say that the person they put in didn't reach their potential, but you would say even more that the person they never even tried, their potential wasn't even attempted. So that's my issue with Crossbones, is he's a great villain that wasn't even given a chance.
Right.
Baron Zemo is a really interesting villain because he was different. He's not this sort of big balling opposite of the hero kind of villain. He sort of operates from the back lines. He sort of orchestrates this much more interesting political plot, which is why I agree. I think Captain America: Civil War is absolutely one of Marvel's best films, if not their best. And that's why I don't think Crossbones is wasted potential, because I don't miss him in that film particularly, because I don't have a connection with him in the past. I think Baron Zemo works very well in the film. I think Loki completed his arc. I don't think there was a whole lot of progression really, because his character is still, like you said, he is still just the god of mischief, just he's not a very menacing one. He's just a bit of a sort of comic side character version of it, which I don't really think benefits the character much when he had such a key arc in Thor and the Avengers. And let's not forget, Thor is one of the weakest Marvel films. The Avengers is one of the best, but Thor's one of the weakest, and he still came out of that as the main guy, as the main villain. But now that Marvel is such a big thing and he's just become overshadowed, you mentioned Thanos killing off the start. I think that was just an example of how much they'd let the character down, how much they wasted this character that had been their star man, and they just turned into this weird, predictable, oh, of course he's going to try and trick Thanos, that's so obvious now. It's just a complete waste of a character that had showed so much and they just let down completely.
Okay. This one might be a very good one. I'll say that right now. So, Kevin, I want to know your thoughts and who gets the point.
This was a good argument. I was surprised by Michael's pick. I just don't think he brought enough to this argument to have said Loki. He was made a parody of in Ragnarok, but Nick countered this by saying he's the god of mischief. That's kind of, mischief can be interpreted in different ways. He had completed his arc from villain to anti-hero by that point. He had reached his potential, got them to Thanos, the ultimate villain. I mean, really, the points about Crossbones were moot by that point. I really wish you would have brought up in Avengers where the Hulk is smashing Loki around and calls him a puny god. That kind of stuff I wish you would have brought up more so than what you did, but my point will go to Nick in this round.
Nick, here's my turn. It's a very interesting Mike, to pick Loki right here, though. You're starting to get your argument started to get very interesting. Your points right here, but some of the parts you're kind of missing too is how much he's so weakened around him with the Avengers, including Hulk and Ragdoll, that stuff. Even Thor just tasing him right over here, though, and even people's like tricks in general, which also Loki's called the god of mischief around here, though. So, and character-wise, you sort of get there right here, but Nick, for me, I think you haven't put up a better argument about a choice to bring on the kind of the wasted potential. The villain Crossbone is his backstory in general, and the storyline throughout Civil War is really unique right here. So I had to get my point to Nick on that one. With that, it's 4-1. So Nick wins the battleground and the match. Congratulations, Nick, right here. But this match right here, congratulations. So, what are your thoughts, Nick?
Well, thank you. I'm exhausted. I probably would have voted for Michael at the end of that last argument, which is very surprising. I thought you went. I thought you went in crazy directions that I didn't think of. So congratulations on that. Congratulations on a great fight in general. I was pissed he picked Woody, and then I was like, who else do you pick? So that's how that was born. But my throat hurts. And Michael, it was a pleasure to share the screen with you, and I hope I see you again soon.
All right.
Oh, and thank you to the judges. Appreciate your time as well.
Thank you. We're going to our fortunate loser of the day. I'm sorry, Mike. Some of the stuff just didn't go your way. Just want to know what your thoughts on it in general.
I mean, I think it's very straightforward. Both of us at one point in the match picked a bit of an oddball, and I think in both cases, with all due respects, I think they were just both cases backfired. So it came down to the other two questions, and Nick got both of those fair and square. So I think that's where the game went in the end. Ton of fun, really good arguments. I think it was a really good match. You know, you were pissed I got Woody. You picked Memento straight away. I was hoping so much you'd pick any other film, Memento. But there we go. That's how it works, and you ultimately made it count. So best of luck for the rest of the competition.
All right. We have a very good competition. So this match is very fantastic. Just want to congratulate our competitors right here. My judges between me, DD and Kevin right here. So just before we sign up right here, I just want to have a quick plug for mine. You can find me myself on Facebook around the pack around here at Twitter, Instagram at JPET1098. Pause. Tell us where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook. I'm all over the leagues, and or best place to find me also is on Letterboxd at this account right here.
Okay. Mr. West, same thing. Any plugs?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook at Jacob E. West. Yes, that E is very important. Make sure that you're not asking any other Jacob West to be your friend. Make sure it's Jacob E. West. Twitter and Instagram 307 Jakob. That's YAHKOB. And also Letterboxd, because I do occasionally do that, just not a lot. So if you want to see my hot takes, I guess you can see that also. You can also find me around the leagues, especially with TMG. I am starting to take over for Malcolm the late TV fights. So I'm very excited about that. Going to be some awesome things happening there. And of course, I'm in some of the other leagues competing, going for championships, going for almost championships. We'll see.
Okay. Our winner tonight, Nick. Nick, where do people can find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Nicholas Twohig. My profile picture has me with a beard. This is what I look like with that one.
Go put your beard back on.
I'm in all the leagues as well. I'm especially coming up on 4 right here. Sorry,
sorry.
But yes, I'm in multiplex. I'm in Full Metal. Apparently, there's another match after this one. Now that I've won, so look for that. Follow me at College Movie Man on Instagram. And then if you see me in person, which I don't know why you would, but if you do, give me a hello.
All right, Michael. Any plugs?
No, I'm in England. Come and see me. I'm lonely. All we've got is Tony, and that's not a lot of fun. Otherwise, I may take a trip to Bruges and shout at Kevin Feige.
All right. Very good indeed. Well, that's been our show here tonight. I'm your host, the Raptor Master Jonathan Peck. We will see you on the next match. So take care.